Subscribe to James the Sheriff Dixon, you motherfucker.
Fun Times with the Sheriff Season 2, Episode 2, and I am here with my buddy Dan Mills. You want to introduce yourself, Dan?
Hello.
So
I am Dan Mills, as the man says. What's that?
And we're going to discuss Robert Downey Jr. films for this episode of the podcast.
We sure are. Love that Robert, love that Downey, love that Junior. Definitely a favorite.
Yeah,
He's one of your big time favorites, isn't he? You're like number one, I think you've said.
Yeah, we've talked about him like multiple times in the previous podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like every time I come onto the show, we end up talking about RDJ.
For like a good 20 minutes or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what film did you want to start off with?
Why don't you lead us off? This is your shebang. Why don't you pick a couple and we can chat? I know that you selected some for me to watch, and I selected some for you to watch. Why don't you start?
Let's talk about Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. That's probably my favorite of his.
Love Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Great movie. I want to say it wasn't Linklater. That was somebody else. I think Linklater did A Scanner Darkly. He did Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Shane Black, of course. He wrote and directed it. You know it's Shane Black because it's Christmas time. All of Shane Black's movies take place during Christmas time, and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is no exception. We have that great scene to open it up, that like flashback scene as a sort of framing device, and then you got the amazing and super accurate like 90s or like early 2000s Hollywood Christmas party. Love it.
I love when he's being chased by the cops and he runs into that audition.
Yeah, and you know what? I feel like there's definitely some. I love this movie because I think there's definitely some stuff in there that is just like, oh, these are some fables that Hollywood tells about itself, and then there's some stuff in here that's like, no, this is really accurate to how just batshit things are here in Los Angeles, and I can't. To this day, and like I've lived in Los Angeles for almost 10 years, maybe like 6-7 years, and I'm still like, that straight up could be real. Like some mope could have just like run in from the street and like cut the line in an audition and like made it out of just like natural desperation. Like I feel like that kind of shit could happen. I mean, you're a Walking Dead fan.
Yep.
Right. You've heard the story about how Norman Reedus got his start in acting. Just like he was leaving a party or something and he was just shouting up at somebody from the street.
He was like shit-faced, yeah.
Yeah. And this casting director was like, oh, this guy's great, and like put him in a play. And it's, like that kind of shit I feel like happens more often than a lot of really hardworking actors, writers, directors would like. But it's as I said, it's one of those things that adds a sort of strange like Hollywood fantasy to this movie, and in the same stroke a bizarre sort of verisimilitude to this movie, which adds to its charm for sure. Fucking love Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Dope movie.
And then his girlfriend like pushes them along the way too throughout that, like towards like whatever he does. I want to add for that storyline.
Which one?
The girlfriend that he has in that movie, this high school.
In Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Yeah, she like.
Oh, Michelle Monaghan.
Yeah.
She plays. Yeah. She plays Harmony Faith Lane in this sort of It's a sort of weird. I mean, obviously, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is this like this sort of like pulp detective noir, this like neo noir kind of vibe, and it does it like really expertly. And I think Michelle Monaghan as Harmony is a really fun sort of spin on the femme fatale character. And yeah, she is sort of at the crux of this whole sort of murder, mistaken identity plot here, and she's really, really great. Corbin Benson, I'm looking at the IMDb page. Corbin Benson is in that movie too. I can't remember who he plays Harlan Dexter. and I'm realizing this now, and this when I wouldn't have really registered with this before, but my lady and I are like rewatching. I'm watching Psych for the first time with my lady, and it's fine. You know, like Psych isn't a favorite like by any stretch of the imagination. I have a lot of faults with it, but Corbin Benson plays the main character's dad in that show, and he's ended up being like my favorite part of the show. Shout out to Corbin Burnson, not Benson, Corbin Burnson, and of course Val Kilmer as Perry Van Shrike, who does a fucking amazing job. That guy is an incredible actor.
No, well, if we're done with that one, we've been talking about Scanner Darkly a lot throughout that. We can just jump right into that one.
Yeah, what did you think of A Scanner Darkly, dude? You had not seen it before until I suggested it to you, right?
Yeah, no, I have not seen that before. Like, I loved it. Like, I think they captured Robert Downey Jr.'s like essence, and I did not expect it to be animation when I watched it.
Yeah, the sort of rotoscope. I think that adds to it, though. You know, like as a movie that's sort of about misconceptions and about like false perceptions, and you know, like people not being able to trust what they're seeing and what they're hearing based on like sort of drug-addled paranoia. I think that sort of wobbly rotoscope style was a really excellent way to capture that. I think that was a really awesome idea. And shout out to Linklater for that.
And especially the cop changing suit. I don't think they could have done that. And then they could have done that in real life, so that actually helped for the animation.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I think that kind of goes along with the themes of you can't really trust who you're talking to. You can't really trust your own eyes, and it's either because of the drugs or it's because like the cops are, you know, they can look like anybody. You know, they literally have this sort of sort of element shifting suit on that was like when I first saw it, I was so struck by it, and like the more I saw it, I was like, this is so strange, and also not strange at all. Like in a way that's almost like the sort of Men in Black, not the movie, but in like I mean, I'm sure you read a lot of those paranormal things about like people meeting the Men in Black, and they appear as like really famous people. So when you try and retell the story, no one believes you. The suit kind of disallows people to pick out any one particular like physical trait, you know, and it's because they're constantly shifting. I thought it was a fucking bitchin' idea, and one that was really difficult to translate from the original text to the screen. And again, I think Linklater did an awesome job in the creation of that. I don't know who did his visual effects in that movie, but really well done.
It was the ending that got me when he was figuring out who like the person posing as an artist, and then like Robert Downey Jr. is like the kingpin, and the whole Woody Harrelson death scene, like that was my favorite scene, the death scene, the Woody Harrelson fake death scene.
Spoiler alert for that, but yeah, absolutely. The end of that movie, I think, honestly, like for a movie that kind of takes its time, and not goes out of its way, but sort of like takes you on this trip to confuse you and bring you into the similar mindset of these neurotic addicts. The sort of like wild, hard truths that the movie like brings down on you in sort of the third act is really, really satisfying. And I think a lot of and again, I think we talked about this before we went up, but another adaptation we were talking about, Less Than Zero, just a moment ago. A Scanner Darkly is adapted from the Philip K. Dick. I think it was a novel, and I think Dick's literature has a lot of really intense, hard-hitting shit at the back of it. You know, like it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of really awesome world building that plays on your paranoias and confusions and your social anxieties, because he was a really socially anxious, paranoid chap. And then at the end, all these sort of paranoias are really darkly and scarily validated, and an indication of like these people who are paranoid, these people who are anxious, they don't want their perceptions to be correct. Like they don't want to be right about the horrible things that they're imagining or not imagining, you know. And you know, what's the most terrible thing that could happen for a person in that situation is to find out that like all their darkly dreaming paranoias or whatever are correct. even the most outlandish ones, like their fucking zany best friend being a horrible drug kingpin.
Yeah.
I think that he does a really awesome job at that, and I think that Linklater and a lot of those people in that movie, Winona, Miss Ryder, and Keanu and Harrelson and RDJ, they did a really awesome job. You can tell that those people really gave a shit.
Yeah,
about that original subject matter.
Like I said earlier, I think they're like a great cast together. Like I said in the other one, they're natural born killers. Like Robert Downey Jr. is great with Harrelson, I think.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and you can tell like they're kind of dudes with a similar vibe. You can tell that I like to think that they're buddies enough that they had a good time with it. Also, before we move on from Scanner, I got to say shout out to Steven Soderbergh and George Clooney for exec producing that movie, despite it being not necessarily a hit. I'm looking at the
score.
I'm looking at the box office stuff right now, and the box office, and I'm not sure if it's American or worldwide, but the box office says 7.7 million with a budget of 8.7, so not technically a success.
Just under.
Yeah, not technically a success, but from my perspective, from this fan's perspective, I think this movie is a fucking hit. Like a great adaptation of an obscure piece of lit, sci-fi lit, really awesome cult following. I love this movie.
All right. So let's move on to another favorite of mine, the Judge. I know you've said you've seen this one.
Yeah, I love The Judge. I saw that movie. I didn't see it the year it came out. I think it came out in like 2015, 2014.
Mm.
I didn't see it when it came out. I think I actually saw it at the beginning of the Quar. Like I think I saw it at the beginning of, when everybody started having to shut in with this sort of COVID horribleness, and it was a great movie for that. And I think it was the first movie of the. Sorry to like steal the reins again. I think it was the first movie out of like that came from what they call Team Downey, which is Robert Downey Jr. and his wife Susan's production company.
I didn't know that he had his own like. That explains why he's like so good. I didn't know.
Yeah, he's in this sort of third phase, this really interesting third phase of his career where he's doing a lot of producing and filmmaking, and I think that The Judge was the first of and I don't know what I say the first, not knowing the subsequent ones, but I do know that, and I was reading it in this Vanity Fair article actually by Rich Cohen. It's called "The Ride of His Life." Really dope article in Vanity Fair about Robert Downey Jr. If you're a fan of his, you should read it. Really informative. It was the first movie that came out from that production company. It was really great. And what does he say about it? Sorry, you might want to do like a cinch cut here while I find this quote. It's a really good quote.
Okay.
Sorry, give me one moment. I wanted to be prepared for that.
That's fine. I was gonna say was like when I first saw it, it was a few years after it like came out, like 2017, 2018 time frame. So
is that when it came out?
Like no, I saw it a few years after it came out. When I was saying like
okay.
A couple. I didn't see it when it was in theaters like you either. I saw it a few years after, like after I liked him in the Marvel movies. I wanted to look up more of his stuff, and that's one of the first ones that came up. Got it.
I mean, yeah, it's a great one, and it's great too as a sort of I hate to say like palate cleanser because you're still after. Yeah, and it's not really correct. It's not really apt to say that because the reason, and I think we had a similar reason for going after this movie, is that not necessarily a palate cleanser because we wanted more of the flavor that was Robert Downey Jr., but it was so drastically different from the sort of sci-fi action comic book adaptations that we'd seen him because it had been so long since he had done anything else.
Yeah,
which is fine.
And it wasn't a comedy. Previously, he's been doing like mostly comedies, and it wasn't a comedy.
Right. I mean, there's always going to be this sort of air of I don't want to say like cynical levity, but there is this sort of attitude that he, for lack of a better word, that he brings to stuff that's very him. That is like sort of perhaps not perhaps like at its core, like a little light, like there's some levity to it, there's a little bit of comedy or just like freshness to it.
Yeah, yeah. He can whatever he
It's
does, he can do. Yeah.
it's not really like dampening, dramatic stuff. hmm what does he say here? I found the quote. He says in this article, Robert Downey, he says, quote, "It was the least likely first Team Downey project, but there was something in the process that was so provocative. I'd find myself tearing up during every work session because of constellations being lit by the subject matter. This idea of going home, what it is to return, fractured relationships, the drama of it. It was a big experiment." I think that what he said is about because of the constellations being lit up by the subject matter. What a dope what a dope thing to say. Like what an awesome way to point out this sort of like elements, like all the elements of this picture sort of coming together and meaning something to this actor. I thought that was a really dope way to say that.
People didn't think he would go anywhere with this, and he did. And again, like, it's just the way he portrayed Chaplin, like how much he loved film, and like how much Robert Downey Jr. loves film, that really pushes it.
I think RDJ's attention to detail, again, like that sort of ability to morph into sort of play any kind of character and really get absorbed by any kind of role and become like really wholly become somebody different, which is something that we saw, a skill set that we saw really early on in his career in the Brat Pack stuff. And then, obviously continued to develop. I think we're seeing a lot of that in this Chaplin role when he's like really like just physically and emotionally becoming this icon, which is so often imitated and so often just sort of caricaturized. I think that, and again, like having not seen all the movie, but just seeing the excerpts and things like that, obviously, and heard him talk about it, I think that Robert Downey did a really good job of becoming the human being rather than becoming the caricature.
That's why I like the character was the best part of that movie.
Yeah, Richard Attenborough directed that. Interestingly enough, the guy who plays Richard Hammond in or John Hammond in Jurassic Park. I did not know that. That's amazing.
That probably explains why it's so good.
Awesome. I guess.
now that we covered that, we can jump into yours, Zodiac, to finish off this podcast.
Zodiac. Yeah, I'll tell you what, man. Zodiac is another. I'm realizing now that a lot of the movies that I suggested were based on books. Zodiac or like literary trope, like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Well, also like cinematic trope, that one too. That's an homage to a lot of old Hollywood. That's definitely a love letter to old Hollywood noir as well. But Zodiac. I just watched this movie again maybe a couple of months ago, and it's a long one. But holy shit, is it really, really fantastic.
Yeah. Like 3 hours or something like that, yeah.
Came out in 2007, and honestly, despite it being almost 3 hours long, you watch this movie and you're on the edge of your seat, or like you're just like sitting there with your stomach churning the entire fucking time. There is no, for me at least, there's no element of that film that really drags. Like everything adds to this like really multifaceted, sort of layered, sort of layer cake of suspense that this movie has, and the deterioration of Robert Downey Jr.'s character, Paul Avery, is a really great. And all kinds of people are in this. Chloe Sevigny is in it; she's great. Jake Gyllenhaal as Robert Graysmith is awesome, and Mark Ruffalo's Tashi, the detective. They're all really great, and they're all so wonderful to watch together. But I think this sort of the grind of this ongoing investigation and the indication of like time past is really executed or illustrated well with the physical and mental deterioration of Paul Avery's character. We sort of see him as this really swaggering, hotshot investigative journalist earlier on in the movie, and spoiler alert, like as the movie goes on, and in the final scenes with him, he's like living in a boat, like playing Pong, living off of weed and like vodka orange juices, and it's just like, man, this guy has just been put through the ringer so hard and been so frightened.
He's one of those that figures out the Zodiac's like killing things too, like like he slowly
Yeah.
puts together. Yeah.
And they all kind of do, and they're in different elements of it, and it's interesting to see. It's not just about these guys solving a mystery; it's about seeing what happens to them as this mystery gets more and more solved, and as more holes open up, the more they learn. Because that's the frustrating thing about the case, right? You saw it, that the more they learn, the more things don't add up, or the more they learn, the more they don't know.
The more they when they learn something, they get another like cryptic message too.
Right. And they sort of, and the sort of not false leads, but the dead ends that they run into, you know, like this guy becomes this really wretched phantom of a character beyond the sort of elusiveness, like the physical elusiveness that he has, and the sort of seemingly random elements of his crimes. This guy is just this fucking shadow guy who just creates false leads and dead ends as he goes, and it really breaks down this journalist character. And I think Downey did a really, really excellent job showing the deterioration of this guy. And I think that's indicative of some of the experiences that he's had in his life too, you know, like going from this kind of young, boisterous success to, you know, we see him in his decline. Obviously it doesn't indicate like his, you know, reemergence into superstardom, but I think that he is really able to access those elements of self and put them into his roles, which is really impressive.
Like you were saying, the decline thing, we didn't discuss it, but he's in Gothica. We see that, and I see that in that.
Yeah, Gothica is great. I don't know what's going on, but Gothica is like getting a reemergence right now. Like I'm seeing a lot of people posting and talking about Gothica again, even though that movie came out in like 2002? When the fuck did Gothica come out with Halle Berry in it? Like, I love that movie. But
I saw
yeah,
that
like
in the beginning of quarantine. Like I didn't know what Robert played a huge role in that.
No, and there's a ton of movies like that where he's just kind of he just shows up in there a little bit and not necessarily steals the show.
Yeah.
But you're like, oh yeah, shit, Robert Downey Jr. was in that and he was good. Like every time you see him, he does a really bitchin' job. And then when he is, you know, center stage, when he's the lead, he's a superstar. Like he's really, really great. He does a really good job. He does a good job assigning himself to these roles and like figuring out what the overall project needs from him as an actor, not just like what he wants to do and how he wants to explode on the scene.
Like compared to his like Marvel films, like him and Spider-Man, he's like they're for like 8 minutes of screen time total, and like he steals the entire movie, and then like his own movie.
Oh yeah. You watch those Spider-Man movies, which you know, we can talk about those at another time. Yeah, I don't want to get down the Spider-Man rabbit hole, but you're absolutely right. When he shows up, when he shows up in these Spider-Man movies, well, even in the second one, like he's not even really there. That almost proves the point even further. Like he's not even like in the movie, but he's so on the forefront of Peter's mind, and Peter even says like everywhere I go, like I still see him. He's such a massive presence in this universe and on the screen, like as a character. It's like, holy shit, even if this guy is not even here, he's all over the place. Like the second Spider-Man movie, Far From Home, is so much about Iron Man and about like his shadow. You know, like the legacies that he left behind through Quentin Beck and through Peter Parker, the one that he didn't support and the one that is struggling to live up to the support that he's been given. Amazing. And that's just more indication that like even outside of the MCU and into the sort of Fox Marvel stuff, like the character of Tony Stark and Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of him is so huge and undeniably important that like you can't get past it. You can't have any of it without that at the center of it. And we know he was at the center of it because there were Marvel movies before the MCU got huge, and it was Favreau's Iron Man that really made everything take off.
All right, so we are at that time frame. So,
yeah, there you go.
Is there anything you want to promote before we end this?
Sure. I mean, this awesome Vanity Fair article, honestly, this was a dope read by Rich Cohen. It's called The Ride of His Life on VanityFair.com. It's about Robert Downey Jr. If you're interested in Robert Downey Jr. at all, read that. Second off, you know that I live stream on Twitch every like 3 times a week, just about. Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. Mills Dan Mills Animal is the Twitch name. And also, I just started work on. I don't know if you know who DJ Khaled is. The hip hop, I guess mogul producer. He has a new show on Amazon Music called The First One, which is about him discussing sort of pioneer works in hip hop alongside some of the biggest like sort of groundbreaking artists of our generation, hip hop wise. And I do the narration for that podcast. So the number one podcast on Amazon right now. Go check that out. You'll maybe hear my voice a little bit.
Okay.
There you go. Thanks for having me, James. This was fun, man.
All right. So this has been Fun Times with the Sheriff Season 2.
Have a good night,
everybody. Next time.
Right, I just want to shout out an amazing channel, James the Sheriff Dixon. Oh, he's such a great guy, and he is super cool for coming to the show. I'm glad I got to meet him in person, and you should subscribe.